Welcome everyone, welcome to the room. Please make yourself nice and comfortable physically and electronically. We're just seeing the numbers popping up there, so welcome to tonight's webinar. I'm Lauren Benny. Welcome to the second, I believe, of our 4 webinars in the Her Life in Politics series. I am going to drop some more of my chat into the chat box as well, and I'd really encourage you to do the same too. I'll give you some more information about me. My name is Lauren. I'm based in the East End of Glasgow tonight. You can find me on Twitter. Please pop your handle in where you're joining us from tonight, and anything else you'd like to add as well. And drop in your social media handles if you'd like to connect with the wider group tonight as well. Fabulous. So I'm just watching the numbers pop up. Thank you so much. And I will shortly start our welcome as well for Her Life in Politics, particularly on community councillors. So welcome to our BSL interpreters, Tebs and Nikki, who are joining us tonight. Captions are available for the webinar, and this webinar, as you can see, is recording, so it will be recorded and it's going to be available for future access to our community, of which you're part of when you register with us too. For those of you who've been lucky enough to have a bit of a break from Zoom over the summer holidays or recess, then please just familiarise yourself with the functions too, particularly reactions and the chat and the Q&A function as well. We ask that you mute yourself as well when the guests are speaking. But I would love tonight if you could use the reaction buttons in the chat box to ask questions at any points in the webinar, and we will pick them up as we go into conversation with our fabulous guests tonight. So we are in for a double delight tonight with Karen, Harcus and Alison Lowe. But first, let me just tell you a little bit about Elector, because we work to motivate, support and equip women like yourself in all of your diversity to stand for elected office in all spheres of government, in your communities, in your schools. We want to provide you with the knowledge and the confidence and the skills that you need to do that. And we work across all parties and none. And we're committed to creating this safe space for women to explore their future as leaders, as legislators, as champions in their community and as champions of political governance, wherever you may be. And we fully recognise that we need all kinds of women in elected office in every sphere of government across Britain, because when women have access to the political leadership, then there are gains for the whole of society, not just for women. So I'm so pleased that you're with us tonight. Like I said, my name is Lauren. I'm your facilitator. I live in the East End of Glasgow. I'm a white woman with shoulder length brown hair. I wear red framed glasses and I have a black top on tonight. I'm in my late 30s and I'm sitting in a windowless office with green grey walls and some shelving behind me in the background too. I'm a public affairs specialist by profession, but I come to you tonight as a product of Elector, having done the peer circles and gone to a workshop and taken part in some of the online community services too. In my kind of professional life, I head up a Scottish charity in Glasgow, and I've been doing that for the last four years. And prior to that, I've spent the last 10 kind of strategically advising local councillors and ministers and cabinet secretaries too. And like I say, I'm really proud to be a product of Elector. And it was Elector who gave me that opportunity to run in the Snap general election back in 2019 when I relocated from London to Glasgow. So before I introduce you to our panelists for tonight, I just want to gently remind you of our Elector values. This is a space for all women to feel safe in, to feel welcome in. It's cross-party, so we are going to all have different political views, but we will all seek to encourage one another, and if we disagree, then we do that with respect too. So today you will meet Karen, Harcus and Alison Lowe, who are 2 members of the Ferntosh Community Council. They're based in a beautiful part of Scotland on the Black Isle in the Highlands Council area. Alison's been a member of the Community Council for several years now, and Karen has joined more recently. And over the next hour or so, we're going to explore Karen and Alison's journey into politics and their experiences as community councillors. And we have had a slight change in the bill, and unfortunately our Community Council liaison officer can't join us tonight, but as a former community councillor myself, and Maggie, our programme coordinator for Elect Her, has had the privilege to have a conversation with our community council liaison officer couldn't join us, and we're going to bring you an extra little something from about 8 o'clock onwards before we open up into the Q&A. So that is enough from me. Just to get us started, just let's show our appreciation as we mean to go on. So I'd just like you to find that reaction button or in your space, clapping your hands, sending love hearts. Let's see them work. You should start to see the hands and the love hearts popping up. Fantastic. Feel free to have some applause, some finger snapping in your space. Just create the energy around us to power us through tonight as well. So, like I said, we're going to be hearing from Karen and Alison, and just while we get settled in and you begin to relax as well, just think about those questions that you want to ask us through the webinar. Could I have a show of hands in Zoom too, using those reaction buttons, who has attended a community council meeting? Just want to get a feel from our guests tonight in the community if you've been to a community council meeting online. Great, fantastic. So we're going to explore that a little bit more. Great, really good place to be in. So, like I say, sit back and relax and let open up the doors to Alison and Karen. Thank you for coming off mic there as well. So first of all, thank you so much for being with us. Really quite simply, could you tell us a little bit more about yourselves and how you got to, how you found yourself on the Community Council? Over to you, Alison.
Oh, first off, okay, I will do the wee visual introduction first. You have to forgive me. I'm really not. This is my first webinar, so it's a new journey for me. So I'm a white woman. I have grey hair that's quite long and tied up with a fringe. I wear glasses. I'm 69 years old. I work part-time in retail still. And we also have a little small holding here at home that I spend quite a lot of time working on as well. My journey to become a community councillor started when I was about 45, and we lived in a different community. Again, still in the Highlands and quite near to Inverness. And I basically joined because they were desperate for somebody to be a secretary, and the chairman approached me and asked if I would step in temporarily, and I think 10 years later I was still there. I found it a fascinating journey. We'd been in that community for, I don't know, 20 years already, and we knew a lot of people. But it's interesting what you don't know about your community, and joining a community council you find out so very much more, and you also find out about local government, how it works, how it doesn't work. You find out how people work and don't work within local government, and if you go sideways from that, you know, ways round things, how other people in the local community can help you. Then about 10 years ago, we moved here to Cobokie on the Black Isle, and didn't know anybody. And we had, so the house that we moved into had an extremely dangerous junction. And because I'd been on the community council before, myself and another resident approached the community council for a bit of help. It took 4 years for that process to be successful, and it was only successful because of the persistence, if you like, and dedication of the community council. And then after that, I kind of decided it was time to give back a little again. So joined the community council just as a member, and now I'm treasurer for a wee while. So that's a little bit about my journey.
Thank you so much, Alison, and I'm sure we'll dive into some of those roles as well within a community council that you can take on as you become a community councillor too. Thank you for giving us that insight. Karen, how tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you came to find yourself in the community council.
Now I'll do my little visual bit.
Thank
So
you.
I'm sitting in my dining room at my table. Probably hear my husband in the background on the television. So I have medium dark hair. I'm wearing reading glasses this evening when I need to. I'm in my late 50s. I am a manager of a medical practice locally. And a bit like Alison, we've got a few acres of land which we keep some sheep on, so it keeps us all very busy. But yeah, I came to be involved with the community council. I've always been involved in community things through the school and with the children. Used to help out at the old folks' Christmas parties and do all those kind of things. And I always wondered what community councillor did. And as I got a bit older and a bit sort of, I wondered if I should think about something along those lines. There was a bit of a plea going out for, we need community councillors, counselling people to join the community council, or we're probably going to fold up. So I have stayed since I was born in this area. We're back in the same area where I was born, in this, not in the same house, but in the area where the house was. And I thought, I'll just volunteer to do this. So I did, and then we got somebody else from our area who came forward, and I thought, I'll just withdraw my application. It's fine. I won't go through with this. But Bruce, our secretary, as Alison will be able to tell you, is a very determined secretary, and he contacted me and said, I would like you to withdraw your withdrawal, please, because it's the first time we've managed to get through the democratic process and go to a vote. It's actually going to have an official vote. And I went, oh, that's made me even worse about this now. But oh well, nobody will vote for me. It will just be fine. Okay. So I withdrew my withdrawal. And really, here I am, because obviously I was voted for, quite to my surprise. Joined the community council. Was very surprised, I think, at the level of activity within the council. Was asked at that point, a few months in, our chair was having some issues, so I had some spare time on a Friday, and I said, if you need some help with admin, I can help out. If you want, I can send emails, that's fine. So eventually it was, oh, well, would you like to become vice chair? And I went, oh, well, I don't know about that. I don't want to be the chair, I'm not into being the chair of anything. No, that won't happen. And anyway, here I am now the chair of this community council, and had great support from the people that I'm with. We are a great team as councillors. We all get on very well, and we've got some very knowledgeable people. I mean, Alison's shared that she was a community councillor before, and I think it comes with the job, doesn't it? Because I think that life skill is something you do learn as you move through council, and you do get to know about how things work, and as Alison's already shared, how perhaps they don't work, and how you have to try and help them along to work. So yeah, it all came as a bit of a surprise, and it still does each week.
Thank you very much for giving us that insight. I think the journey into community council is obviously similar to mine, Alison, as well, in the sense that I moved from London to Glasgow and really wanted to find out what was going on in the community. So I kind of was looking at what groups were kind of meeting in the East End of Glasgow, and the community council was one of them. And at the time, I didn't realise that I was then going to spend 4 more years going to those meetings once a month, every Tuesday, the last Tuesday of the month, or the second Tuesday of the month it was, for my own kind of development, and also just for the thing that I can relate to, Karen, what you're saying is like how to convince people to go along with the good ideas that come out of community councils, navigating the bureaucracy sometimes and understanding how a local council works. So and I have to say as well, just I've made some really lovely lifelong friendships from being a community councillor, and that's been something that I've truly benefited from as well. So if I was to Google, and anyone who wanted to Google what a community council is, and I'm thrilled to see so many community councils actually joining us tonight, who've kind of expressed that in the chat as well. We might be able to learn from each other too tonight. But if I was to Google what a community council is, it would tell us that the general purpose of a community council is to ascertain, coordinate and express to the local authorities for its area and to the public authorities the views of the community which it represents. But what does that really mean for you? Kind of lifting that off the page, what does your community council do, Alison?
Well, now, when we got the brief for tonight, I had a quick Google myself, thinking, oh, I wonder what I'm going to say. Is it correct? You know, because I think every community council is different. That's my experience, and there's a page or a website, communitycouncils.scot, which actually sets everything out in really readable, simple terms, I think. And my thoughts about community councils is that they represent their community. They're a point of contact for people in the community if they have issues, problems, or even if they want to contribute something. The community council is a focus for them, a first stop, if you like. And I think nowadays it's more and more difficult to know within councils, you know, our situation as Highland Council. And since COVID, it's even more difficult to get in touch with anyone. So your community council is your route, if you like, in to finding out, I don't know, why my salt bin isn't filled up, or, you know, really simple things sometimes much more complicated things. So basically, I think community councils are a voice for their local area. And when you become a community councillor, well, my experience was I learned I knew nothing, and it takes time. You don't learn everything instantly. Karen and I still have the odd conversation about, you know, how do we do this, or where do we go for that? And our go-to is, oh, well, we'll just ask the secretary, he'll give us the information because he's been doing it for so long. But there are other places, you know, to get advice. We have a ward manager. Everybody has a ward manager. And when you get a hold of them, because they're up to their eyeballs in work, they're really, really helpful. You know, you're never flying, you might be flying by the seat of your pants, but never alone, basically.
And is that ward manager someone who works for the local authority?
Yeah, for the Highland Council, yeah, and she looks after a few wards. But yeah, so basically, to answer your question, a community council is there for the people of that community area to go to if they want. And in actual fact, our community also say thank you for the things that we do. Yeah.
Yeah. And Karen, you talked about kind of the roles that are involved there in your chairing the community council. Now, can you describe a bit more about the roles that are available to those who are successfully elected to community council?
Yeah, well, we currently have a secretary. Alison's the treasurer and I'm the chair. I did become vice chair, and it's something that we're looking at again to possibly get another vice chair, because I think we found that the workload has increased. Well, certainly Alison and I have over the last few months, and I think it's just to help with the workload. We have a very talented and very knowledgeable planning guru on our team, so everybody goes to Ian and goes, I don't understand this, can you tell us, please? And we're looking also at possibly getting I think a subcommittee together to deal with other areas, because I think you can get very bogged down if you've just got the three roles. And I suppose my job as a chair is to try and just delegate and keep everything together and put things that way. But then you can get, you know, the secretary then gets bogged down and the treasurer doesn't know, well, will I do this or will I do that? And this is another thing that's come in. So we are exploring, expanding and involving a bit more really throughout the whole of the council, because I think it's really good for others to take charge. I mean, I think one example was roads and transport. We had a really good council member who used to look after the roads and transport for us, and then he just became a bit unwell and had to stand down. So that's just kind of been absorbed back in. And I think it's good to have different areas where people can just kind of shine their own little light. And I think it's good too that, because what I've realised, I think, since I started doing this is people are a bit bamboozled about where they go in local government to get various answers, and most of it is now a call centre, which is not anybody's fault, that's just the way it's organised. But you will find that if they don't get an answer, they come to the community council and go, oh, you see if you can get them to fix this. I've asked Tom, Dick and Harry and none of them are responding. And we also ran a liaison group with local developers. So we're part of that. So we're looking at developments and, you know, are they completed the way that they're supposed to be completed? So it's kind of wide ranging, but the roles I think might just be going to move along a little bit to try and ease the workload for everybody.
Yeah. So we've got chair of the community council. Some community councils have a vice chair. I know of community councils have a minute secretary sometimes, depending how big community councils are as well. But often that might fall to like a vice chair or the secretary. We've got the treasurer. If your community council has subcommittees as well, I know you have to sometimes have quota in those subcommittees. I think that's a really good point too, if you've got a personal interest as well. Those kind of smaller groups and subcommittees might be where people can kind of sort of cut their teeth on campaigning or learn how to communicate. I know Denison Community Council had a subcommittee called Communications, and we were responsible for trying to secure funding to actually build physical notice boards in the community and manage our social media. But there was also roads and environment, so not too dissimilar to what you're describing as well, Karen. And we had a planning, likewise, we found our planning guru who has sat on the planning committee and shared when those applications, and that's similar with licensing as well. So you can see what licenses have been applied for in your community. Just before we go any kind of deeper into what you're up to at the moment, what your community council is doing, can we talk a little bit about the process to becoming a community councillor? So Karen, you mentioned there as well that the popularity of application meant that there could be an election held if there was enough people going forward. It meant that candidates wouldn't be unopposed, and it would go to an election. And for anyone who doesn't know what that means, it would be then a kind of secret ballot, which would allow members of the community to vote for their preferred candidates as well. So can you tell me a little bit about the process? Did you have to find kind of a proposer and a seconder? Do you remember that kind of process, Alison, for putting yourself forward to be the community councillor?
That's very funny. You're talking there, and I'm thinking, oh, flipping heck! How did we do that? All I know is that I expressed an interest, and our secretary basically held our hand and said, "This is how you apply." But I think we did have a proposer, and a seconder, and I mean on the council website, you know, when the time comes. So we've got what, a year and a bit to go before the next round of elections, if they're going to happen. And it is all on the council website, and we also have a newsletter email list, and the secretary is very good at putting things out in plenty time, or even saying we don't have enough people to carry forward, as Karen was saying. But it's not, you know, as I recall, the proposer and the seconder doesn't have to be, as in some cases, a policeman or a lawyer or whatever. It's just a member of the community.
Correct, yeah, they just have to live in the community that the community council covers, and in most instances to be on the electoral register, although I know that some local authorities do have alternative measures. If someone's not on the electoral register for whatever reason, they can still be a proposer and seconder. It just might take a little bit longer to process, but yeah, that's absolutely right, proposer and seconder, and you need to be over the age of 16. And a resident within the boundary of your community council as well. And it's a 4-year term, I believe. Technically a 4-year term between the AGMs. But sometimes community councils can co-opt you in as well. If they maybe have, say, 10 places and there's 8 community councillors, there's a lot of work on. They can also co-opt members on throughout that 4-year period as well. So what I would say to anyone who's considering it, just seek the opportunity, because those community council liaison officers and the ward managers will really help and encourage you to get through the process as well to become a community councillor. So just on thinking a bit more about you yourself on community council, have you faced any particular frustrations, again, particularly as a woman perhaps, while being on the community council, and tell us about how you've overcome any of those challenges? If I can go to Karen.
I don't think I've faced any really by just being a woman. I think there's definitely challenges. For me, it was slightly different because I took on the role of chair quite early in my journey before I'd actually got a huge amount of experience, and was making decisions about things, and I'm thinking, oh, didn't even know that group existed. Now I have to make a decision about it. You know, it was a bit of a baptism of fire. And still, I think, as Alison said, you just rely on the people that have been there slightly longer to guide you a bit more with the information and things like that. But I would definitely, yeah, I mean, you can have challenging meetings, can't you? There are people there who have opposing interests, and you have to remain very polite and guide everybody down the path going, we need to move on. Alison's given me a few tips for our meeting tomorrow night as to how we can be a bit better at managing time and not just letting everybody have their say. But yeah, I think there are some frustrations, I think, when a resident comes to you with a very, I don't know, I suppose it's an issue that they're concerned about, and you try your hardest, and still after 3 or 4 meetings, you've got nothing to report because nobody has got back to you. I think I find those things frustrating. The lack of communication sometimes from other agencies. There's nothing that I can do about that, and there's nothing the council can do about that, but that is quite frustrating. Just because then you have to reassure the resident you are doing the best you can. We just have to keep trying to follow it up. I think I find those breaks in communications a bit more frustrating, really.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's good to hear. Alison, have you had any particular frustrations while being a member of the community council?
I think I've been very lucky in as a woman being treated just like any other person. You know, it's not be you're a woman, it's you're a person. I've been very lucky in both community councils, but I have heard of other community councils where I think, depending on the makeup of the community council and sometimes the generation of you know, the community council, that there have been some problems, and I think you just have to be persistent. I think persistence pays off. Getting angry achieves nothing, in my mind. In the past, I've had dealings with, among other things, planning, which was, to be fair, totally a male environment, and persistence and politeness in all of these things, I think, pay off rather than getting angry. As far as meetings and things go, I think the worst we Karen and I experienced was we're on maybe the odd Zoom meeting, and that seemed to be, I thought it was because it was Zoom and people weren't in a physical hall. They kind of forgot themselves a wee bit and became a bit challenging. And that was on the point of being a little bit upsetting, I think. But that wasn't because, you know, it was a woman in the chair, and I think that person would have been like that anyway. But I think I think the other thing that people forget is that we're volunteers.
Yeah.
You know, we completely volunteer to do this, and sometimes people's reactions are as if you were, you know, paid to do a job, and their expectations are maybe a wee bit high for folk that, you know, don't do it professionally. I think we do pretty well, but that's an observation, not a complaint. Yeah.
I think the words that really stood out for me there, Alison, was persistence and politeness, and Karen, we might come back to some of those, kind of maybe sharing some of those tips as well about kind of managing that space and time, because whether you're in a physical or an online digital community council, you will always have public input on your agenda, and you'll have sometimes a police item, and they can take up a lot of time when, as a community, you've got a lot to get through on your agenda as well. So we'll come back to that. And you've mentioned there about kind of quite well organised member of your community council, and I spotted on your community council's website page that your community council email distribution list can reach 42% of your community's voters. So kind of my question really is about how you kind of utilise that to your advantage, and maybe more widely, you know, how you engage with the community. Karen, do you want to kick off?
Yeah, well, we are very fortunate. We've got 42% of our voting population have said that they would like to be emailed. We do have a notice board which comes out as well, which comes out, I think it's every quarter. And I think the lady who is going to be, who is editing that, is actually going to try and bring that out to more residents. Before COVID, it got delivered to every household. But since COVID, obviously, there's now, do we need to do that for the environment? Should we have all that printing? Things like that. So we're looking at that. And we've got our Facebook page, which we put things on, and our website. And we do try and encourage everybody to just have an email, or if you've got somebody you know who would want to have an email. And we're trying out sort of like a dual meeting where we have a Zoom invite as well as a face-to-face meeting. It works 2 out of 3 halls. Internet in this area in some of the halls is very variable. So you can start off with maybe somebody who has joined, and then after 5 minutes they've left because it's all crashed. So we have that option as well, where we can try and involve, you know, we had a mum who couldn't come out very much, so she really enjoyed being part of the Zoom meetings we had. So we do try and do that as well, but we're always looking for new ways of trying to involve people, because we are aware that there will only be a certain amount of people that want to have our emails. The rest of them go, I don't want to be, I can't be bothered with all that in my inbox. So I think it's always a bit of a challenge, isn't it, to work out how you can approach more people and how you can get more people involved without making them feel that they're getting too much thrown at them.
Yeah, especially when you'll probably be seeking like consultation responses as well, and the views of your community at regular times throughout the year. Yeah, and it makes me think about that bonus of the accessible meeting that you've created, because I live in the East End of Glasgow, and 20% of the population don't have a digital device at home that's got it's got enough data to be able to kind of join meetings, and so that's why it was really important that we try to secure funding for physical notice boards as well as the kind of the digital stuff that we were doing. So it's about being open to everyone in the community too. Alison, is there anything you want to add to that?
I think my main thing is, maybe because I'm a wee bit older, not everyone, especially, you know, the older members of the population have computers, can use computers, and it's a source of, I don't know, frustration. And, you know, how do we get round this? Particularly, we've got a new little bus service, the wee Ferntosh community bus, and it's made, you know, we want it to be used for everyone, but it's trying to reach out and reach everyone in the community that might benefit from it. And a lot of those are the older age range in the population. So I would say if anyone has got any innovative ideas of how to reach out to the older population, we would be delighted for you to bring them up. We've been trying various things, as Karen said, the newsletter, the notice board. We had an article in it actually trying to encourage people to gossip with their neighbours and things and pass on information, because I just kind of think a sense of humour sometimes passes messages on, but we don't know if people bin their newsletters and don't read bits of them. It's really difficult to reach out nowadays, you know, because people don't get together quite the same.
Yeah, and please, if there are community councils or just, you know, activists and in your anyone's line of work where you've had some kind of successful or impactful communications, please pop them in your chat, the chat, because we will definitely will share them as well. I can see some of them popping in already, and I want to thank Sally for her question, because once we've got just past some of the final questions around the actual projects that you've just described there, including the local bus, we'll move on to bring Maggie in. But yeah, please share your questions. We'll bring Karen and Alison back for that later. But yeah, just Alison, you said there about your minibus, your local bus. Can you talk us through that? Because you've obviously identified a need in the community, and yeah, I'd love to hear how it's going and what you've learned from it as well.
Well, it kind of started off because the local bus service, you know, the was Stagecoach, ran a commuter bus service plus a few services supported by Highland Council in the middle of the day, and finances and such like, and various other things that happened, Stagecoach actually took away their commuter service from the middle of the village. And we are a very rural area, and so the A9, the main route north and south, is about 2 miles from the village. And they they very kindly said that they would stop on the A9 to pick up any people. But if you're using a bus, generally you don't drive, or you don't have a car, or you can't afford a car, you know, quite often. And so we had difficulty for the first 6 weeks after that happened, actually even getting to the A9. We managed with some people, you know, volunteering their cars to drive us. Anyway, 18 months later, we got a bus service back into the village, but and I was one of the people who had to get the bus morning and evening, and we had no bus shelter and standing in the rain and snow and everything. And Bruce, our secretary, in conversation, you know, during this time, and in trying to get publicity to get the bus back and all the rest of it, and conversations with Bruce, he had said that his I don't know, heart's desire, if you like, would be to have a community bus that would be tailored, if you like, to the needs of the community, and be a daytime, evening, weekend service. And we were lucky enough to be asked, as a community, to be asked to take part in a pilot scheme, which was funded by European money. It's a joint project with Hightrans, Highland Council, ourselves, and it it just about started as COVID lockdown came, and we have, I have to say, it's been a learning curve for everybody, for Hightrans, for Highland Council, for us, but we have hiccuped and teetered along. We now have an all-electric wee bus. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 seats. It can take a wheelchair. We have just had the charger up and running in the village, and its launch is in a couple of weeks' time. We have paid drivers funded through Highland Council between 9 and 4, Monday to Friday. And then we are just expanding our volunteer driver base, and are taking bookings as long as there's a volunteer driver, evenings, weekends, within the Black Isle. The only qualification is that people who use the bus, who can book the bus, have to be permanent or temporary residents of the Ferntosh Community Council area. And it's just beginning to take off now. In fact, some members of the Community Council are going to use it to go to the Community Council meeting tomorrow night. So that's going to be quite exciting, a first.
I mean, that's huge. That is a huge effort, and in terms of resourcing and securing and campaigning for and communicating and maintaining. It really is. I think that's a huge achievement for your community council, for your community, to be able to identify that need and deliver that. I think there's, yeah, thank you, Maggie, for popping that link in the chat about, we can read a bit more about the community transport, because if ever we needed like a best practice example of how to, convince people about the need for the service, right, what we talked about at the start is that. So yeah, thank you for drawing our attention to that as well. Karen, do you is there anything on your agenda in terms of what else you'd like the Community Council to tackle and undertake? What's on the horizon for Ferntosh Community Council?
Well, we were trying to encourage the Black Isle community councils as a whole, the various community councils, to get together. That's kind of not gone too well over the summer, but there is money available, so we were trying to get together. One of our members is on the steering group for that, so that we could possibly just get some project ideas together and then look at whether they would be funded or not. So that there's sort of lots of things sort of lying around the area currently that we're just trying to pull together. I don't think we've got any big projects really. We've managed to do some, well, planning is always a huge thing, but we've managed to get some safety measures put in place for one of the local woods. We've had a chicane barrier put up, and we had a very nice thing, a memorial service one of our members had organised. There was a very tragic drowning in one of the woods. Was it 70 years ago, Alison? 60, yeah, 70, yeah.
60.
So that was quite a big thing that we organised that, and Scottish Foresters Commission is coming up with lots of things in the area that they want to renew paths and renew areas, and to be able to put signage and things. So there's lots of little things that we're just working on in the background, but I can't think of any major things. Can you think of anything major? I mean, the bus has taken a lot of focus, hasn't it, and a lot of determination, and I wasn't part of that. I just joined the party later, but it's been a great achievement.
Great. Yeah, I wanted to offer an example. In our community, we wanted to increase footfall into our local high streets a couple of years ago, pre-COVID, and we were, the business was kind of struggling a little in the East End, and so we kind of got together as a community council and created a dinosaur hunt. So a really simple idea of putting dinosaurs in, giving them to the shop owners and having them hide them in the windows or on the shop counter somewhere. And we worked with the 4 primary schools in our area and explained that there'd be a dinosaur hunt over the long bank holiday weekend. You could collect them and write down the names of the dinosaurs, and there was a bonus dinosaur that had been hidden in the library. So again, encouraging the community to go to the library, and we were able to secure book tokens. So 3 children from each of the primary schools would picked out a hat and would be given that book token, and we invited them along to the community council because we also wanted to kind of generate that kind of young person interest in kind of what's happening as well. So that was just something that we were able to pull together over the course of maybe 6-8 weeks. Really simple kind of initiative that we could get behind and communicate, kind of working locally to encourage people to visit the shops in the local area. So they can really be big and small, can't they? Whatever that kind of need is at the time. So I'm going to give you just a little break, Alison and Karen, and bring Maggie, and then we'll go back to the comments and questions that are in the chat as well, and also the questions that people shared with us when they registered for the event too. So we'll give you a break, and I'll bring Maggie in, our programme coordinator, who is a former city councillor. She no doubt will have worked with the community council liaison officers. There's 2 in Glasgow to support 85 councils. So as Alison and Karen said, sometimes the ward managers can be quite busy and manage multiple councils, and we've got 2 officers who support the Glasgow Community Council. So Maggie, what did you learn from Deborah when you had that chat, and what can you tell us about kind of working with the local authority and any other sort of jewels that we can share with the community tonight?
Hello, Lauren. Thank you, Alison and Karen, as well for everything you've shared and all the comments that are coming up in the chat. I am a white woman in my 50s. I've got glasses, I've got brown hair tied back and a fringe. My background is blurred, but you can just about see the purple walls of my living room come study behind me. I'm going to talk a little bit about the work of the Community Council Liaison Officer, because that's really important. But before that, actually, I just want to add, having been a councillor, I'm not anymore, but having been a councillor, I just want to say, for those of you who are thinking about becoming a community councillor, or those of you who are a community councillor, it's an invaluable role. Some of the best contacts I had in the local community were from the community councillors. They were such good supporters. If you're not familiar, if you've not been to a community council meeting, you'll know that the local councillors will generally attend. They're invited. They don't all come. They don't all come to every meeting. But in my local area, we have 3 councillors, and we would take it in turns and make sure that between us we went to the different community council meetings. And that was a great chance for us to hear about if there were problems with streets or potholes or bins or just local bits and pieces that were going on. And we were regularly able to pick up issues that came from the community council and work with that. Another thing that our community councils did locally here was they would take us on walkabouts. So every so often, the community councillors, the councillors and 1 or 2 council officers would just walk about the area and look and see, is there an area where there's a place where there's a lot of fly tipping or something, or some other issue, and that would allow the councillors and the council officers, where possible, to pick up on these issues and do something about it. Yeah, as I say, from a councillor point of view, and I think local members of Parliament, local MPs and local members of the Scottish Parliament would also from time to time get along to community councils. So just remember, you can contact your local elected members, get them along and get them working with you on local issues as well. But that's not what you asked me, Lauren. You asked me about the work of the Community Council Liaison Officer. And I just want to say a little bit about that before we get on to hearing from the other women who are in the room, because I'm sure you've got some questions to ask. Community council liaison officers are your friends. They're your friends in the council, but I think has already been noted, very often there's only one or two. They're dealing with a lot of community councils, so they may not be very proactive in engaging with you, but they're always available to be there and support you. What they do in each local authority will be different, but broadly I would say there's 3 different strands to what they're there to do. And the first, as has been touched on, is just that practical support and advice. For those of you who are in community councils, you'll know that there is a scheme for establishment, which is, I think, a 7,000-page document that gives you all the information that you need to know to be a community councillor. And the community council liaison officers are always there to help you if you're struggling to make sense of that document. Some councils will have guidance notes that go with that, or briefings that will help you. But if you need to do things like, how do we set up a subgroup? How do we manage our accounts? How do we appoint somebody in the middle of a term to become a new community councillor? Then they're able to help and answer those kind of questions. The second thing that I think is really important to remember is that if there are problems, or if at any point things go wrong or become difficult, that's the person to talk to. Just occasionally there might be a complaint. It might be somebody in the community council is unhappy with what's going on, or it could be that a member of the community is unhappy and decides that they're not happy that the community council is doing what they should. We've touched on the amount of responsibilities that community councils have around planning, and that can often be very emotive, and so that can bring up strong feelings from people. So if there are problems, then that's the person you can talk to. If there's a formal complaint, they will absolutely deal with that, but quite often they'll be able to help you before it gets to that stage, work out how to negotiate, whether it's within the council or whether it's with the local community member who's just not very happy with what's going on. So if you think things are becoming difficult, if you are concerned, don't wait, speak to their community council liaison officer there and then, and just get their support on that. And the third thing I would say that they would be able to offer is training and development support. Again, it will be different in different local authorities. In Glasgow, where I'm based, the community council liaison officers would organise regular meetings where community councillors could get together. Sometimes that was a briefing on a topic. Sometimes that was just an opportunity for community councillors to network with each other, get to know each other, get tips and hints from one another, but also they can offer specific training. Deborah, who was hoping to join us today, has done sessions, for example, for treasurers, getting treasurers together to make sure they know what their responsibilities are and to help them. We've talked about the challenge of chairing sometimes, whether it's managing the dynamics, whether it's just making sure you get through all the business. And again, they can offer training and development on that kind of thing too.
I mean, whistle stop tours, some top tips for how to engage with your local authority. That's really, really helpful, Maggie. I must ask, how many community councils did you attend as a councillor? How many did you have in your ward?
I had 5 in my ward.
5 in total. And if you think about kind of the number of meetings that I had, it is quite a lot, isn't it? But I guess you and the community councillors are joining up the dots, aren't you? You're kind of piecing the pieces of the puzzle which are coming together.
Yes, absolutely. And actually one of the strengths of community councils as well, I'd say, is that they are cross-party spaces. They're not political. The 3 councillors in my ward all represented different parties. And the community councils were in many ways a really lovely space where we could put our party politics to one side. We would work with one another as councillors and with community councillors in order to look at local issues. So that's a really valuable space to have that. I think some people want to be involved in local politics but don't want to be involved in political parties, and community councils are a really useful space for people who want that something of an engagement, don't want to be involved in the party politics.
And did you use community councils kind of Were you involved in that prior to becoming a local councillor?
No, I hadn't been. It was something new to me. It was a bit of a learning, a discovery, as I got to know the local community councils in the lead up to the election. But it's something that I hope to stay involved in. Actually, it's one of the one of the most enjoyable parts of being a councillor, I would say, is good connections and good engagement with local community councils.
Yeah, that network's really important, and it can also become your support network as well as your kind of connecting network of people who are doing kind of similar roles in your community as well. Great, fantastic. Let's move into Q&A if we can, Maggie, with your technical abilities. And I'm going to scroll back up into the chat and welcome Alison and Karen back into our space as well. Hearing lots of kind of good tips and advice across the whole night, and I guess my kind of first question is, before I go to Sally's question, is just along that theme of what Maggie's talking about. What advice would you give to a member of our community tonight who's thinking about standing as a community councillor? What is your positive advice? Karen.
Oh, I'm glad you've added positive. I would say probably just go for it. Just do it, because, as I say, for years I was curious as to what people did and why they did it, how they did it, what do they do, and I'm really glad that I did. It's been it's been a bit of a challenge sometimes, but yeah, I think you should just go for it, because there will be an area that you will find that you're better at than other areas. But that's why community councils works well, I think, because we all have our own little skills that we can bring to it, and we've all got different areas that we like to maybe follow up on or do things. So yeah, I think anything that gets you involved in your community has to be good.
Yeah. And Alison, what advice would you give to a member of the community tonight?
My initial advice would be go along to your community council meetings as a member of the public for at least 6 months if you can. I mean, it's a year and a bit till the next round of elections. And I think you'd be fascinated to find out what gets dealt with there. It gives you a feel for it, gets you a feel for the people that are there. My experience from knowing nothing and becoming a community councillor is that you learn so much. You learn about people, you learn about the system, good and bad bits about the system, and possibly also learn how to use the system, which is a good thing as well. You know, you can always take that with you wherever you are.
Using the system for the advantage of your community, absolutely. Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that. Karen, is it a role that you can learn as you go along?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I had no clue when I started. I still don't have much clue about some things, but yes, you definitely learn as you go along. And I think Alison's brought up the point that, you know, the system is very different, and when we arrive we think, oh, I didn't know that happened, or how does that happen? And I think, yes, you definitely learn as you go along, and there's always somebody there that can help you get through it. You know, somebody will have maybe got previous experience of something, or you're all going into a different situation together, so you've got that support. But yes, definitely every day is a school day.
Yes, absolutely. Maggie, we're gonna try something slightly different in terms of if anybody would like to actually come onto screen and ask their question as well. Chris has her hand raised, so I just want to check if Chris wants to ask a question, or if it's a legacy hand. Feel free to kind of comment in the chat, or we can bring you in to ask your question, Chris. No pressure. While we're having a think about that, Sally, you've posted a question into the chat as well, and we'd just like to offer the opportunity for you to come on screen and ask your question to Alison and Karen if you would like to ask your question. just before we do that, Chris, if you do want to unmute, you can do that from your end to ask your question.
Hi, I don't
Hello.
really have a question. I'm just listening. I think I must have put the hand up by accident. I'm sorry.
Well, no, it's quite all right. Well, it's lovely to hear your voice, Chris. Thank you very
Uh,
much. And we've tested the tech, so it worked. But not a problem at all. Thank you very much. And over to Sally, if we want to give Sally the opportunity to ask her question, Maggie. We'll just bring Sally up on screen if Sally would like to unmute and ask her question about the issues that are addressed.
Hi.
Hello,
Yeah.
Sally.
Yeah, hi. Yes, I'm a member of my local community council. I've been a member since towards the end of 2019. So I've never really kind of experienced, you know, in normal circumstances, what it's like to be a member of the community council. Obviously, the whole time I've been on the community council, we've been very much influenced in terms of meeting and getting on with our work by the restrictions around COVID and reluctance of people to kind of, you know, return, I suppose, to normal life. Although hopefully we're getting there then. But one of the observations that I've kind of made as somebody who's come new into the community council, and very much like your speakers were talking about, I think one of the reasons I was interested in joining the community council was because I didn't know anything about it, and I didn't really feel that anybody in the community knew very much about the community council. But one of my observations is that there's a kind of tension between how much of your work is dictated by the things you are asked to submit responses to consultations by the local authority, and how much of your focus should be on actually kind of championing issues that are raised with you by local people. I think our community council is very much focused on kind of responding to those consultations. And I think that's one of the reasons that maybe we find it, you know, quite challenging to engage with the local community, because I think they kind of see some of those issues as being quite kind of removed from them, and that actually they would like us to work a little bit more on the things that, you know, they think are more important to them. But I think that there's a tension there, because would we ever be successful if nobody's kind of, you know, in the decision-making body is really kind of interested in those issues at the moment. So I'd just be interested to know how you kind of manage that kind of tension, or whether you experience that kind of tension in your own community council.
Great, thank you so much for the question, Sally. Really, thank you for your input and your insight too as well. So I guess the question kind of more generally is like, how do you balance the challenge of the demands of the local council versus the needs of the community council and the community? And just as Sally's described that as well. Who'd like to go first? Alison, thank you.
Hello, Sally. An interesting question. We, like any other community council, have a lot of consultations and also a lot of other stuff going on, planning being the main one. And so, as well as having a community council meeting every month, we also email out. So the secretary, if there's a consultation, the secretary will email out saying consultation, and then the consultation will go out on our email list. And then the responses are consolidated and returned to Highland Council. That's, you know, after we've done that at a meeting. And that kind of, you know, each one requires an effort, but I think the way we do it is, if you like, the least effort on our part. You know, we're lucky we've got 42% on an email list, and the people will respond to the consultation if they're interested. You can't make people, you know, respond to consultations. Just some things interest some people and others don't. And so my opinion is that's the way that we best use the time for the community councils, and the meetings are generally spent discussing issues that people have brought up, whether it's, if it's a planning issue, then we listen to what our residents say. Generally residents only get in touch when they want to object to things, as opposed to support. But there is the occasional support for things. But we're quite clear that we're there to, I guess, support what our residents want. That's what we're there for. So I don't know if you find that helpful, but there we go.
I don't know if you can still hear me. Can you still hear me?
Yes, Ali, we can hear you.
I do. I find that very, very interesting, actually, because I don't think we do that at all. We spend vast amounts of time at meeting discussing responses to consultations.
Okay.
And actually your approach of dealing with them, I think, is very interesting and provides an opening really for the issues that are of concern to the community to be raised at those meetings, which I assume then kind of encourages people to attend the meetings, because they can see those meetings are about them rather than about us.
I think that the main point is that community councils are there to represent their community. So you really need to ask, you first of all ask the community what they think, and then you take the responses that come back, summarise them, and then pass that on to the relevant people who have produced the consultation in the first place, because all you are there for is to represent your community. So that's how I see it anyway.
Thanks very much.
Thank you for your question, Sally and Alison. And Karen, was there anything you wanted to ask on that, respond to in that particular point about balancing the challenges?
No, I think Alison has explained
Brilliant.
the process very well. No, thank you, Alison.
Fantastic. One of the things, again, just sharing, because I know that our community councillors on the call, we quite a substantial amount of consultations through Glasgow City Council as well, and often we felt that if we didn't answer some of them, it was a missed opportunity, and we found that we had to kind of really establish subcommittees to be able to get through the work of a lot of that, the consultation work that came in. We met every month, so 12 times a year, but every third meeting was a planning meeting, so it was actually closed to the public and anyone else, and it didn't really, just had an action note rather than minutes, and that's where we got a lot of our work done as well. So 2.5 hours to kind of work through our agreeing and pulling together all those outside voices that we'd heard to be able to kind of keep the regular community council meetings on track as well, because the volumes can be quite high sometimes. And we were very lucky at Denison Community Council to have 16 community councillors. It was a big group. It was the largest one in Glasgow, and it was actually a real honour to chair it. But it was busy, and that's what leads me to my next question, really about balancing your own life demands with finding the time to be a community councillor. How do you juggle that, Karen?
Yes, well, I don't know, you just do, really, I suppose. You just get used to being able to have a look at the emails, see if there's anything that needs to get responded to. Is there something that I can just wait? We've got a meeting tomorrow night, so we're all geared up for the next session, and we've got somebody coming to speak, a guest speaker. So I think it's just a case of you just have to make time to do it, really. It's something that I think Alison touched on it as well. We are all volunteers, and I think some people think, oh, you just dedicate your life to it. Well, you do, but you're still working. Alison and I still work. There are a number on our committee that don't have to go to work, who are retired, but I think because you have decided you wish to do this, you just have to make the time for it. some weeks it's more pressing than others, but you know, you just have to sit down at a weekend and go, well, I've got that and that to do, and then you just have to do it. But I think we're quite fortunate in our secretary deals with most of the correspondence.
Yeah, so dealing with that volume.
Yeah, there's not a huge amount really for us to reply to, apart from him going, what about this and what about that, and do you think, and things like that. But you know, it's something that we've decided we'd like to do, so we just have to get on with it.
Yeah, absolutely great. So that kind of own personal organisation and prioritisation, and I think really driven by your passion as well to kind of, you know, be working in your community too. We've got a great question for Christine, and just while Maggie works with Christine to bring her on screen if she would like to, I think it's really relevant to what you're doing as well, because I was reading previous minutes of your community council. I am definitely hashtag political geek in that, and I love hearing what community councils are doing. And there was an agenda item about youth community councillors, and some of your neighbouring community councils had made a presentation to the local school academy, and you were kind of thinking about how you were going to be potentially kind of ring fencing some of your community council money for youth opportunities, and thinking about how to bring people on. So Christine is unmuted and has a question to ask in that space as well. Over to you, Christine. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. No, it's been brilliant. Thank you. So I sit on our local community council, and I guess because I would like to encourage young people to be involved, I just wondered whether you have any young people who attend your meetings, and how do you engage young people to ensure that they do have a say locally, for example, your high school pupils?
I'll open that floor, to Karen and Alison.
Right, well, we did, there was a visit to our local high school, and it was noted there that there was 2 young people who wish to be involved in the community council. So we've actually approached them a couple of times now, and they've not responded, but we had, because they were local, we had thought we could have a meeting, invite them along to one of the more local meetings to them, so that they could just come along and basically just come along to a meeting and discuss what they would like to see in the community. How could we involve them? What would that mean to them? And how would that involvement sort of take place, and how could we develop it? So because of the school holidays, we've just left them in peace again, but it is something that I think we need to just remind them that we're here, we're happy to hear from you, please do come along, and just start that discussion really, and see where it goes, to see what they feel they want to do and how they want to be involved.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. Thank you. I think a lot of the time that we do mention issues that relate to young people, but it's about getting their voice rather than us being older than them, presuming what what they might want locally. So that's really helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Christine. That was a really good question.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for us at Denison Community Council, we held some of our meetings in the schools as a way of being easily kind of reachable and contactable. And we've also had some success with attendance around from the members of the Scottish Youth Parliament. So I think they're more aligned to the kind of the general Scottish Parliament constituencies, but we there are ways to communicate with them through individuals who are over the age of 16 who work with the Scottish Youth Parliament to help bridge some of those gaps when there's kind of those absences of responses and emails and things as well. And I mentioned earlier, in ways of communicating with the wider community, we being involved in the local festivals in the East End of Glasgow and with those community groups has been helpful as well, to kind of reach a younger audience. But your councillors, your local councillors are good individuals to ask as well about how they're connecting with the young people in the community. There are some fabulous community groups out there specifically for young people, which could maybe open up an opportunity to have a partnership with your community council as well. So some kind of exploring to do in that space as well. But ultimately our meetings have to be accessible, don't they? To be able to be in a space that's accessible to everyone. So we can all learn from each other in that. So thank you very much. Maggie, are there any other questions coming in through the chat? I think we might be wrapping up nicely.
No other questions coming in at the moment, unless anyone's got any last questions they want to ask.
Thank you so much. I think as well there's just some great comments in there about how to communicate in the communities as well. And please, we've got a town councillor as well, Councillor Alexandra Boyd Wessex as well, and it's encouraging us. It's a very informative job to do as well. So I'm just quickly going to drop into my list of questions that were kind of shared with us in a registration. So let me just give me 1 second till I pull up that. Yeah, so this was a question that was kind of registered with us, or more a kind of comment. I wonder whether you can maybe offer some advice, but this member of our community was saying that they need to build their confidence to make their voice heard over kind of other louder, more opinionated people in their community space. So I just wondered if you get any tips or advice about kind of perhaps dealing with that challenge of behaviour or helping a member of our community to find their voice. Any thoughts, Alison?
Yeah, it's one that comes up occasionally. I think sometimes people are afraid to even start speaking. Sometimes I think people talk too much because they're nervous is another thing. And I think as if we're talking about, you know, as a community councillor being heard within the community council, and you feel that you're being ignored, then there's generally a pause, you know, and that you can just stick your hand up and keep it firmly in the air. If that doesn't work, maybe a wee chat with the chairperson, out with the meeting, if you can manage it, is maybe not is not a bad idea, because I think sometimes you forget everybody's human, regardless, you know, and people's behaviours are quite often driven by other things in their lives. And I think I know it sounds awful that you should be the understanding one, but sometimes it's up to you to just grab the nettle and do something about it. And as I said previously, being persistent and polite, and, you know, usually, in my experience anyway, pays dividends in the end. So I would just say, you know, don't be loud, just be persistent. And if you feel that you're not getting anywhere, have a chat with the chairman, woman, person, whatever. And,
yeah, that's great advice.
Have a resolution there.
Great advice about kind of privately talking to the chair. I think, you know, that kind of private conversation, firm hand in the air, and you know, and if your chair's the problem as well, you know, if the chairperson that's in your community council is perhaps just has one vision, then find your allies on your community council, and those people who share similar views to you, because when you start to kind of pick up the numbers and grow that group, then you might just have the votes to have your idea kind of pushed through, or really, you know, to have your voice heard as well. So I hope that's been helpful to the individual who asked that question in registration as well. So we have, I think, will be our final question. We've got Trace who's joined us, and she's unmuted as well. So Trace, if you'd like to ask your question from your perspective, please.
I moved into this area just over 2 years ago. I used to be on the community council in a lot bigger place. It was in the city of Dundee, where I was. I'm now in a small village in Ayrshire, and they are going through a lot of changes. I've joined the community council. I am a member of the community council. But what would you suggest? Because sometimes, especially with the changes that are coming, and because I've got experience, yes, within Dundee, and I know it's going to be different because it's a lot smaller place being in Ayrshire, so that I don't get shot down. and feel like I'm out of place, because I'm starting to actually wonder, is it because I'm female or is it because I'm in a wheelchair at times? And it's just like, I'm now at the stage of, do I stay or not?
Thank you for your question. Karen, do you have any thoughts?
I think I would probably just persevere, to be honest. I think if you've got a challenge, or you've got something that you feel quite strongly about and that you want to put your point, I think you should just try and persevere with that. I think it can be quite difficult, but being the chair of a meeting, I do try and include everyone. I found that quite difficult when we were doing Zooms, because I would miss hands here and there. But I think for me as well, I do get some of the residents, if we've got a speaker, some of the residents will contact the secretary and say, oh, you know, I would like to mention that there's a point I'd like to bring forward. So I will get that for the evening of the meeting with the resident's name, and then I'm aware that they wish to be included in the conversation, and make sure when we get to that point that I can bring them into the conversation. So I think just persevering with it. I think it would be a shame if you've got a very good thing that you want to bring to the community and that you're not allowed to do that.
And I think
whatever reason.
Tracy, I think as well, like, you bring a fresh perspective as somebody who's been in the area for 2 years or more or less. You know, and your new ideas and your lived experience are all things that a community council should
Not
and
new
would want.
ideas I'm actually trying to bring in. There's been a big massive change, and there's a way to be funding in the area. And I know through experience of Dundee, I was trying to help with advising that, but I've been getting shot down because they've all got ideas of where it should go.
Okay.
And that sort of thing. And I'm just like, well, I've been seeing problems, I've been hearing problems, but you just get shot down.
Okay.
And it's getting now to the stage of, what's the point?
Okay, Alison's wants to come in there.
Yeah, I would possibly suggest that sometimes it's quite a good thing to make, if you like, a statement, you know, ask to speak, make a statement and say, I know it must, you know, so you face them up with, you know, I know it must seem to you that I've just come from a big city, although I was on the community council there, and it's completely different ballgame to being in a small village. But I would like to be a part of this community, and I would like to contribute, take a little bit of the knowledge that I took from big city things, because I think I could actually help you with some aspects of it, and, you know, reiterate that more than anything, you want to be a part of the community, and you are aware that in any small community, generally you have to be there for about 100 years before you're ever considered local. But with the greatest respect, you know, perhaps you do have a little bit to contribute, and just, you know, throw it up in their face, as it were, bring it to the front.
Okay, I'll try that at the end of the month, and I'll see how that goes. Thanks a lot.
Best of luck, Trace. Very best of luck with that as well. Yeah, absolutely. And I like what Alison's done there in terms of she's almost taken their argument away from them. Like, you're presenting that, you know, and know I'm from Dundee, but I do have these ideas to bring. So I really like that technique as well. Great, thank you very much. There's some fantastic comments in the chat tonight, and I know that our speakers have probably been busy kind of engaging directly, but I just wanted to give a massive shout out to Zafira, who is 16 years old, and therefore, yes, she's saying, I am one of these young people attending the meeting. She's interested, and she's here with us tonight, and I hope that you find your space in your community council too. You know, in Scotland, you just have to be over the age of 16 and resident in the community council boundary. So if that is, if that's you, then please go for it. And I think that brings us round nicely, just really to close and just do a little bit of a recap, because some of the things that were standing out for me tonight is that persistence and politeness that both Karen and Alison talked about, and lots of different streams there, persevering in that persistence. You know, when you're in these community council settings, I've always lived by consensus, and if you can't reach consensus, it's respectful compromise. Very much the values that Elect Her operate in. You know, we have differing views, but we are all trying to get together on common ground and do the best for our community, whether that be a community council, whether that be a community in the way that you define it for yourself too. I just want to say a huge thank you to Karen and Alison for being our guest speakers, our first kind of community councillor event, sharing your experiences with us and your challenges and your celebrations. Yes, please do hit those reaction buttons and show your appreciation for Alison and Karen tonight. And this wouldn't be an accessible space if we didn't have Nikki and Tebs with us, being our British Sign Language interpreters for the evening. And so we're so grateful for that and for the opportunity that Elect Her offers everyone in the space as well. We're a club, we're a community. I've talked about that tonight. We're so pleased and thrilled that you're in our space with us. And we have more of these Her Life in Politics webinars taking place. There will be another one on local government councillors and also one with MSPs. And please check out our resources on our website. If you are an Instagram user, the link tree is a fantastic space for all of that extraness that Elect Her offers. So check out those opportunities. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn. There's a Fund Her space if you're looking to try and secure funding as well. There's so much going on, and including in November, my Political Future series. I will be facilitating that, and that is a much more workshop-led space. So lots of contributions and engagement takes place in that space. Slightly different to our webinars tonight, but finally, just thank you all so much for being with us tonight. If we can have a final finger click round of applause for Alison and Karen to say thank you and good night. Thank you so much to you both.
Thank you very much for inviting
Thank you
us.
very
Thank
much.
you.
Spread the love, share the love. Thank you so much. Appreciate all the
Thank
comments in
you.
the chat. All right,
Thank
good night,
you.
everyone. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you, ladies.
Night.
Bye.
Take care, everyone.